Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. I know we've got a couple that are still trying to get signed on, but we're going to go ahead and get started for today's presentation, which is thinking further, or more specifically, great things happen when you think further. And whether you're saving in your retirement plan now or just getting started, or you know a family member or a friend who has a 401k or is saving for retirement, this is something that I would implore you to share with them once we send the recording out. And not only if you're saving or have retirement, but it's important for us at Whalen Financial, for everybody to understand when we're building portfolios, what we think about over the next 10, 15, 20 years of clients' lives or in their retirements. When we're advising them, whether it's in their 401k plans prior to retirement or while they're in retirement, the things that we're looking forward to over that time frame of where we're going to be in this world from a technology standpoint, an engineering standpoint, and a medical standpoint, and how those areas really play into the overall portfolio. But today's presentation is going to be a little bit different than previous ones that you've attended, because we're going to approach things about retirement a little bit differently today. And that difference is captured here on this first slide. And what we want to extend your thinking beyond the here and the now to really think about not just your future, but your family's future as well, and the next generation and the legacy that you're going to leave behind. Because in our opinion, great things do happen when you think further. So I'd like to start by, having everybody think of a few questions that are on this screen and just answer these yourselves. No need to, physically, chime in and answer them. But when we think about these, more specific that you can be about the answers to these questions, the better. So make sure you be honest with yourself. So the first one is how do you envision your future after you finish working, or how do you envision your future to and through retirement? What will you be doing in retirement? Where will you be living? How will you be spending your time, and who will you be spending your time with? The how, what, where, and who of retirement is vitally important in constructing something for the future with regards to investing. And there's real power, in our opinion, in envisioning what lies ahead and where we want to go. Experts tell us that the more vivid we can imagine our futures and can identify with our future selves, the more likely we are to plan successfully for them. And I ask clients all the time, where do you want to be? Whether that's a client that's in their 40s or early 50s, where do you want to be in 15 years? And it's even harder when you get younger. I just met a young couple yesterday that are in their late 30s, trying to ask them where they want to be 20 years from now. And I know that's really hard to grapple, but that same time frame, 20 years, for someone that retires when they're 65 or even later 68, they have a pretty high chance of being retired for 25 to 30 years. So when we invest clients' capital, we don't want to just think of next year or next month. We want to make sure that we're focusing on either companies or areas of the portfolios that not only address the who, what, where, and when, but also what the economy and what companies are going to look like over the next 20 or 30 years. And for many people, retirement is really morphed, and it's no longer simply the end of work, but it is often now viewed as the beginning of a new life phase filled with what we call opportunity and purpose. It's not, the days of, hey, 62 or 65, stop, and now we just watch The Price is Right every single day and collect Social Security and retirement checks. It really is a new phase of life. And if that's true, then we need to be thinking further because in our opinion, great things happen when you do think further. So what we like to tell everybody is think of planning for the time as an investment in your future self. So whether that is we're working with younger individuals or we're working with people that are already retired, what we want them to think about is a future self. So how do you plan for how you're going to get there is the biggest question. And whether that is in a 401k if you're still working, or in an IRA, or in a Roth account, or in non-qualified accounts, the opportunity, in our opinion, is obviously yours. So fortunately, That's why we're here at Whalen Financial. So your 401k plan or your IRA or your Roth give you an important opportunity to save for the future as well as invest for the future. And we're going to help you make the most of that plan every meeting that we have with you. And this valuable benefit that many American workers don't get. So if you do have a 401k plan or you are self-employed and you're saving in your own individual retirement account or Roth, make sure you take full advantage of that. And after all, if you pass up that opportunity, what do you think your future self would say 5 years from now or 10 years from now? And retirement accounts, these are yours. So for everybody that's not familiar, retirement accounts are your accounts. And you decide how much to contribute. You control over how to invest your savings. And you are in control of what you do with that individual plan. So saving in and investing in your retirement accounts won't help you with every aspect of getting you from your present to your future self. But having the financial resources to do what you want to do will give you greater freedom to decide how you want to define your retirement. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk to you about the most important things that you need to know about your retirement savings as well as investing. And all you can, and everyone that's listening today and anyone that you send this to can all participate in this. You don't have to be an investment expert. You know, that's what a lot of individuals rely on us for, is the investment portion of it. And throughout this discussion, I want you to keep your vision of the future in mind, since that's really what you're saving and investing for, is the future. And what I try to tell everybody when it comes to stocks, specifically when there's high times of volatility or people think that things are overpriced, is I want everybody to picture a stock as a car. And that car is on a road. And that car has a current price, which is reflected, in the ticker symbols on a daily basis, whether that's a specific company or an index fund. It has a current price. Well, stocks are vehicles of future earnings. And what essentially they do is they look at estimated future earnings and they discount that back to a current price. That's how stocks work. So if stocks are vehicles of future earnings, what do we have to do? We have to wait for the future, whether that's next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5-year estimates on projected earnings. And that's what is reflected in the price of some of these stocks that, make headlines on a daily basis, is where they are in the future, where they intend to be in the future, what their management team is doing to construct a portfolio for their future. So keep that in mind. Now, today, we're also going to take some inspiration from these three people. And they know a thing or two about the power of looking to the future with optimism. I have a saying that I say not every day with our clients, but a decent amount of the time, that optimism is the only realism. And these three people that are on the screen today, they're going to provide about a 5-minute interview, each of them, in their different fields of study about where they see their fields over the next, I believe it's about 50 years. And I know a lot of people listening today say, well, Andrew, I'm not going to be alive 50 years from now. But even if that's the case, it's important that we invest the proceeds of your hard work into ideas and companies that are looking towards that future goal. And in these brief clips, you can watch, we have the link to watch the full videos and also other visionaries that we think contribute to, the future optimism of what we've got going forward. And these videos, what I hope you'll see is how each of these visionaries is passionately working to turn their visions into a reality. Now, each of them imagine a better future for all of us, one that is filled with better health, more time to pursue our interest, and greater opportunities to make a positive contribution to the world around us. So in this first video, who we're going to be hearing from is Dr. Daniel Kraft. He's a physician, he's a scientist, he's also an entrepreneur. And he is from Stanford and Harvard trained physician scientist and an innovator. So let's hear what he has to say first.
I think in the future, in health and medicine, there's so many new technologies. They're getting faster, cheaper, more powerful. They're converging to a point where we can mash them together in really powerful ways. It's a really exciting era. There's lots of opportunity for innovation and improvement. I'm Daniel Kraft. I'm a physician, scientist, entrepreneur. Looking to the future, I thought, what better way to do that than think about the world that my son and my daughter are going to grow into, which is, changing really, really fast. Our traditional model, I think our meme for the way we practiced healthcare is actually not healthcare, it's been sick care. We wait until often we get sick. We have the heart attack, the stroke, the cancer that pops up. Where things are sort of heading, I believe, is from waiting for disease to happen to wellness and prevention. In 50 years from now, we'll have the equivalent of almost an OnStar for the body that's going to be taking information from our environment, from our diet, from our social networks, from our genomics. Health will become something that's truly infused and integrated into our life. It's not for their doctor to be in charge of their health, it's you own your own health information. Many of the technologies, which used to be super expensive, are riding sort of Moore's Law. The poorest on the planet will have access to low-cost tablet technology, phone technology, that can enable them to be connected with a physician in their local village, access the best medical minds, the best medical databases, using artificial intelligence to understand the whole spectrum of publications and guidelines and omics. It's not just about the data that's important, it's how it becomes actionable information to help guide you, just like a GPS would be, proactively. What's particularly exciting now and going into the next 50 years is we're starting to unlock and understand the brain. The world of telepresence, which is just on the cusp of exploding with technologies like Oculus Rift, where you can feel like you're in a virtual environment and not be able to tell the difference between that and reality. That could be hugely powerful for modulating behavior change. For example, if you can look in the virtual mirror and see future you if you're not maintaining your exercise and your diet regimen and see yourself 50 pounds later or 10 years later if you keep smoking, that can change your mind and sensibility. We're seeing now new ways to train the brain, to interact with it directly with technology, the world of brain-computer interface. We're on the cusp now of building optical prosthetics, basically a bionic eye. As the sensors get smaller and better, they're going to reach the point where we have almost normal vision. To take a woman who was completely quadriplegic, can't move from the neck down from a stroke or a motorcycle accident, for example, put a chip on their motor cortex which can read their thoughts, essentially. I want to move my arm to the right or to the left. And she can now control a three-dimensional robotic limb to give her first drink of coffee, for example, in 16 years. We'll have those who have major disabilities connected back to not only prosthetic arms, but maybe rewired and connected to their own. Alzheimer's today is a devastating diagnosis, which I think by 2064 will lead to a world where we won't wait for someone to get Alzheimer's. We're on the cusp of having imaging modalities that can pick up the plaques in a patient's brain 10 or 20 years before they're showing any clinical signs of Alzheimer's. We'll be able to give them interventions, whether that's mind games or exercise or other therapeutics that fits under not just personalized medicine, but this idea of precision medicine to participatory medicine. It's not just enough to treat a whole set of Alzheimer's patients. We want to learn from every single one of those and contribute to the whole medical establishment. Imagine elements like our human genome, which cost millions of dollars 10 years ago, is down to about $1,000 price point, and in 50 years, maybe the equivalent of $5 or $1 or even almost free. And I see the future being one where we'll 3D print a pill with your name on it, with your combination of drugs that help prevent the diseases you're at genetic and other risks for. 50 years from now, I would hope that many cancers are essentially cured because we're going to find them early. We're going to prevent them from happening in the first place for those who have the predispositions. We'll be taking every single tumor. We're going to sequence every tumor. We're going to understand the expression profiles. We're going to be able to model which drugs work for that individual patient in animal models and in simulations that are run in the cloud. And when you do need therapy, it's not going to be the one-size-fits-all pill that's off the shelf. We'll be personalizing that therapy using other agents that can scan the literature and know it's worked for other patients with similar subtypes and molecular pathways. Many cancers will become chronic diseases or be cured because we're going to apply very specific combinations and cocktails that really match that individual's cancer. I think the future of health and medicine will not be just going to the high-tech drugs and interventions and devices, but being more attuned to our own rhythms and diets and exercise and behavioral elements. You can have a truly integrated care that's smart, it knows you, it knows your physiology. It can manage the drugs and interventions in a much more personalized way than we have today. Much more a partnership between the doctor and the patient and the healthcare team. And so it's smart and infused in everything that we do. The future's coming faster than we think. We won't wait for disease to happen. We'll start to cure the well before they even get sick.
You know, that's pretty amazing. So just think about it. What he said was, we will be able to cure the well before they even get sick. And, you know, he mentioned a number of factors there where when we're trying to plan for investing, again, it's not what is going to happen now, but we want to be part of companies that are going to be there for the next 5, 10, and 15, and 20 years, because the life cycle of our clients is going to be there for at least that long. And think of it where he discussed, you know, healthcare is more sick care now. The system waits for symptoms to arise, where the future of healthcare will be more directed towards preventative care because of the mass amount of information that we're going to be able to know more about ourselves, as well as our surroundings and the habits that we have and how that will affect us. So I think Dr. Daniel Kraft really hit it on the head there with regards to the future of overall medicine and prevent care versus sick care, which is kind of what the healthcare system is addressed, which is why costs are so high within the overall healthcare system. Now, the ultimate in prevention, which was huge implications for wellness. And what I want to go into next is the power of prevention. And in retirement savings terms, so this gets back to saving and starting early. So if you have nieces or nephews or family friends or cousins or people that are really just starting out, or maybe they delayed a little bit too long, like some of the younger couple that I mentioned earlier that were in their late 30s that hadn't really started saving, this is really powerful. And the best prevention is to start early as you can, much like Dr. Daniel Kraft said. And it sounds logical, but you may not fully appreciate the magnitude of the effect of starting early. And to drive this point home, I want you to consider 3 retirement savers. Now, each one saves $5,000 per year, okay? And Emily starts at age 25 and saves for 10 years and then stops. Paul starts at age 40 and diligently saves every year until he retires at 65. And Steve, he starts at 25 and doesn't stop until he retires at 65. And any thoughts on who comes out ahead and by how much? So remember, they all save $5,000 a year each. Emily starts at 25 and saves for 10 years. Paul starts at 40 and saves for 25 years. And Steve starts at 25 and saves for 40 years. What's interesting, and you probably guessed it, is that Steve is the real winner here, but who came in second, right? And the reason is actually it's Emily. And at retirement, she has more than $390,000. Even though Paul's total investment is 2.5 times more than Emily's, $125,000 versus $50,000, he actually has less than Emily at retirement. And if you take a good look at Steve's numbers, even though his total investment is just $75,000, more than Paul's, he has almost 3 times as much in retirement, all because the savings he put away between age 25 and 35. So the point is, you've got to think further than just the present day. The sooner you start, the better. Many people in their mid-careers regret not having started when they first had an opportunity. They always thought that they could get around to it, but they never do. And if you're here or if you know someone that is eligible for a plan and hasn't started yet, definitely implore them to do it today. And your future self, whether it's for a family member or for a friend, will thank you for it later. That I can promise you. Now, for those of you already in retirement, when was the last time that you really reevaluated any kind of contribution amounts that you were making, or already have a plan that you're currently making contributions to? And for those of you just getting started, is there an idea that you have in mind of how much you really want to save? So whatever the situation that you're in or your family members are in, I hope that they're at least contributing in some way for the future. And if there's a company match, enough to maximize the company matching contribution. Think of that as part of your compensation. Would you leave that money on the table, right? So if there's a match in a plan, make sure that you're contributing up to that match at least. And at minimum, at least 5%. It's a good round number to start with. So what I want you to consider putting away just a little bit more, take a look at this example here. And this is whether it's in a plan or you're just saving in a non-qualified account every single year because you have excess income during retirement. And instead of sticking it in the bank, saving it to invest for the future is much more vitally important. And you'll see the power of increasing your contributions by just 1%. And none of these include any kind of company matches, but if you save 6% rather than 5%, and you start saving at age 25, at retirement, you could have $100,000 more by just increasing it by that 1%. Now, this is just based off of a 6% annual rate of return, but just by increasing your savings rate, there's a drastic difference in the ending values. Now, if we accelerate that a little bit further, and you increase that contribution rate by 1% a year, here's what you could do if you increase that savings rates from 5 to 10% in 1% increments every single year. So after 40 years, it could mean you have more than $800,000, almost twice as much money. And how about increasing your savings from 5 to 15% in 1% increments? And in that example, after 40 years, it's almost 1.2 million, all things remaining equal, which is more than double the amount. So what I try to advise our clients, like I said, who have family members or even existing clients that are contributing to their plan, is mark your calendar to increase the contribution rate on the date that makes sense most to you. So whether that's January 1 or your birthday, for instance, some people time their saving increases to correspond with their annual pay raise, thereby splitting the difference basically. So if you're already in a plan or you're just saving into a non-qualified account, because you have excess savings, reevaluate that contribution amount. And for those of you that are just getting started or know someone that's just getting started, tell them to save as much as you can today, but make sure you're periodically revisiting the contribution rate to maximize that savings. And even a small amount adds up. So if you're wondering where you'll find money to increase savings, consider how much small everyday expenditures could be cost cutting for the future self. We also do this for people that are, they come to us when they've only got a short time away from retirement and they've got excess cost. Well, the only way to reach your retirement goal, if you need a specified amount of income, is either cut expenses or increase savings. And the only way to do that is look at some of these small amounts. So here are a few examples of expenditures that many of you make without even thinking too much about it or giving it too much thought. Small amounts for sure, but over the course of a year, they become more significant. So if we think further, say 30 years, they could really add up if you start looking at these. So the first one is just $2 vending machine visit, 2 times a week, $208 a year. That's $16,000 over 30 years. So that's not even with any kind of compounded growth or annual rates of return. A $5 latte, 2 times a week is $520 a year, $41,000 over 30 years. And $12 for a lunch. I don't know where you can find a lunch for $12 if you go out, unless maybe it's a Subway or a fast food chain. But if you dine in, it's probably hard to find somewhere for $12. But lunch, 2 times a week, dining out for $12 is $1,248 a year, almost $100,000 saved over 30 years. So whether you're approaching retirement, in retirement, and the budget is a little bit tighter versus the income that's coming out, make sure that you look at some of those small amounts because they definitely add up over a significant period of time. So what I want to do is get back to one of our visionaries. And here you have Donald Sadoway. And Donald is the John F. Elliott Professor of Material Chemistry in the Department of Material Science and Engineering at MIT. And he envisions being able to generate electricity that is not only cleaner, cheaper, but also better. And to make electricity dirt cheap, he literally challenged his team to invent a solution based on what's in a pile of dirt. It's called the liquid metal battery. So let's take a listen.
Somebody said, what's the one most significant invention in the modern world? It's electricity. Everything else is derivative. I see myself as someone who's putting the ideas of science to work to solve societal problems. I mean, that's what engineering should be. The engineer is the steward of the Earth's resources. So let's figure out how to make the best use of these resources and start looking at the tough problems that are much longer range. So the biggest problem, as I see it in the world of energy, is electricity sustainability. I mean, electricity is modernity. Without electricity, you don't have the modern world. All the stuff that we have today, wireless world, internet, communications, all of it's predicated on electricity. So we really need to figure out how to bring electricity to everybody. Unfortunately, a lot of the electricity that we generate today, we do so by burning carbon. Well, we have sustainable ways to make electricity. Wind, solar, but they're intermittent. What happens after dark? When the sun doesn't shine? What happens when the wind doesn't blow? If I told you I'd give you electricity 12 hours a day for free, but I won't tell you which 12 hours, what are you going to do with that? That's useless. So how are we going to be able to harness wind and solar and do so in a way that's reliable? It's with a battery. And that's why I've been working on that. I want to give us the ability to draw electricity from the sun even when the sun doesn't shine. And that's a powerful idea. So how do you deal with the intermittency and do it at a cost point that's acceptable? Just be smart and invent to the price point and make it come in because it's cleaner, it's cheaper, and it's better. So the only way I know to make it dirt cheap is to start with dirt. Go in the backyard, take a shovel of dirt, bring that into the lab and tell the people, invent a solution based on what's in this pile of dirt. That's the approach that I took to invent this battery. It's called the liquid metal battery. We've got data now from these batteries, and the fade rate is so low. If we cycled them once a day for 10 years, we'd retain over 99.4% of the initial capacity. Or if you want to wait until they're down to 80%, that would be 305 years. That ought to take care of pretty much everybody who's listening to this. Earth abundant elements in a simple design that's easy to build, that means you can put it all over the world. Batteries in the United States will be built by Americans in the United States. Batteries for Africa will be built by Africans in Africa from African resources. And then they become authors of their own futures because now they've built the devices that are keeping them electrified. You don't build a giant next generation grid. You break the grid up so that every user can be a generator. So I generate my electricity on my roof and I store it in my basement. The other area is metal production. What's the #1 source of carbon dioxide? Steel production. Steel production. So how are you going to produce steel without greenhouse gases? I know. The electron. We use the electron as the reducing agent. And the electron is no emissions. It only comes in one purity, 100% pure. And if we have carbon-free electricity, and then we take dirt and convert it to metal, so we make iron at the one electrode and oxygen at the other electrode. And so now we have the ability to build modern society. People live by the golden rule. You know, I'm going to treat you as well as I hope you'll treat me. I enunciate the platinum rule. The platinum rule is I treat you better than I expect to be treated. Now, I put that into my research. Imagine a process that makes metal in such a way that the air is cleaner in the vicinity of the smelter, that the water is purer downstream from the smelter. The residents fight to have the factory sited in their neighborhood because their neighborhoods are cleaner than the rest. Why aren't we thinking about big ideas instead of little ideas? So World of Energy 2064, we will generate electricity without burning carbon. That'll give us sustainability. Electrification of the planet. Once these things become competitive, then they're going to blow the doors off of the other stuff. And then you'll see it go. Imagine that you electrify parts of the world that at the moment don't have access to electricity. What does it bring? First thing that comes to mind is water purification. And that means sanitation, which then means health, which then means the opportunity for a lifetime of other than survival. And then with the knowledge that comes streaming through the wires comes education, and then you've got it. You've got healthy people that can feed themselves and put themselves to work. I mean, it's so enabling. It's the missing piece.
Now, Donald is certainly focused on tough, longer range problems. I just find it very fascinating and definitely interesting that, I'm going to have to relate this to, retirement in some way. You already know that. But in the ways that we think, there's an electric car company that's highly valued, but it's not just in the consumer experience that that company delivers every time you get into their car, but it's also the battery technology that is behind that company that really has the ability to propel it into the future, not just in electric vehicles, but also in every facet of life. So for our earlier discussion, you already know about the power of time when it comes to, retirement planning. This next principle is a variation of that. And I try to say this almost every time I meet with a client, and that's keep a long-term perspective and avoid reacting to short-term events. So whether that's COVID, whether that's a presidential election, whether that is the Chinese trade war, whether that is the Greek debt crisis, whether that is the problems with Iran that happened in the first part of this year, whatever those short-term events are, it's always important to keep a longer-term focus, because remember what I said about stocks. Stocks are a vehicle of future earnings. So inherently, we have to wait for the future to be able to be rewarded by those companies. And of course, there's always going to be up and downs, but when you invest in the market, in other words, there is risk involved inherently. But without risk, with risk often comes reward. And the great things about saving for retirement or investing through retirement is that time can reduce risk. And you don't need this money tomorrow or in 2 years from now, or even the next day. Even if you're within striking distance of a retirement date or even currently retired, your retirement, like I've said, will most likely last decades. So it still makes sense to maintain a long-term perspective with regards to investing, not just what we're picking, but also the emotional behavior around how we handle these short-term events in a long-term perspective of retirement. So this slide really looks at time is on your side. And this goes back from 1950 to 2019. And where it shows stocks returned as much as 52% or as little as negative 37%. So really the great news when things were good, but when things were bad, well, not so much. But as the holding periods increase, as you can see here, that those levels of extremes, both positive and negative, shrink considerably. And in addition, the magnitude of the negative returns really starts to diminish. So that in the 20-year model, there were basically no negative returns. This means that there have not been a 20-year period in all the time when stocks have ended up lower than where they had started. You can see that here, whether that's stocks or bonds in blue or in yellow. So the shorter range, obviously, there's possibilities for volatility. But as you stretch that out, and like I said, if you're 65 now, you've got a pretty high chance of living 25 or 30 years. And over that period of time, the world is going to be different. Companies are going to evolve very differently. And we need to keep that long-term perspective when it comes to investing. And this is yet another example of the power of thinking further and focusing on what's really important. Periodic down periods may feel painful at the time, like in March and April of this year, but they don't have a significant impact on the bigger picture. It is just our emotions that allow us to dictate emotional decisions that may hinder us from making a long-term decision. Now, this one gets back to staying invested at all times. So staying invested also means not jumping in and out of the market in response to short-term fluctuations. I mean, I've answered a number of questions just over the last few weeks about, the disconnects of the market and the economy, and hey, we need to time this or sell that. I read this article about shorting this. And all of that has to do with just basically jumping in and out of the markets. And I can promise you, I don't have one. I don't have a crystal ball. If you do know someone who does, please let me know. I would, give my arm for one, because then we would be able to, all of us at Whalen Financial and all of our clients, we would be able to own the earth. But since no one can predict exactly when the market will go up and down, it's important to stay invested at all times. And often some of the market's biggest days come on the heels of a downturn. And what this chart shows is how much your return can suffer when you miss just a handful of the stock market's best days, using the 20-year period that ended December of last year. So by staying invested in the market every day throughout that period, a $10,000 investment would be worth more than $32,000, which is about a 6% average rate of return. But had you just missed the 10 best days, just 10, over the last 20 years, so let me give you that. That's 7,300 days, okay? And if I do 5 days, 4, 12, 20, that is 4,800 market trading days, roughly, over the last 20 years. 4,800. And if you miss just the best 10 days out of that 4,800, you would have been left with just over 16,000, or only a 2.44% rate of return. Missing 30 out of 4,800 days over the last 20 years, 40 or more of the best days, and your 10,000 investment would have actually lost money. You can see it here. So the importance of this is over the last 20 years, there's been about 4,800 market trading days. And if you miss just the best 10 of those days, your returns are drastically different. Well, what forces you to miss those 10 best days? Certain events, gut feelings, versus picking good solid companies and owning them for the rest of your life. Obviously making changes to those allocations, but not trying to time the market in or out. Knowing where the market will be, seeing the time of investing, as well as the longevity of investing. And I know it can be tempting to move money in and out of investments in an effort to time the market, but it just doesn't pay, and this is the proof. This also means you should generally continue contributing even when the market looks bad, because you're actually buying low, and increasing your return on investment when the market goes back up. So always remember to think further, that you are saving for the future or investing for the future, and that any savings that aren't invested aren't working for your tomorrow. And I believe it was Grant Cardone who said, nobody gets wealthy by saving money in the bank, especially now. Maybe the 1980s when you could get about 7 or 8% on a money market or even higher on a treasury account, but definitely not today when basically the banking system is having you pay them essentially to lend your money out. So it's important to always to remember that saving just to save doesn't create wealth. Now, this is one of my favorite conversations that we're going to have with Jennifer Healy. And in this last video, Jennifer Healy, who holds a PhD from MIT in electrical engineering and computer science, and what she is currently doing, she is currently the senior research scientist at Intel. And as you will see, Jennifer is all about using technology to live the best life that we can. And a number of things that she's going to say play into how we kind of shape the portfolio and choose the companies that we do in our equity portions of the portfolios. So we'll give Jennifer a listen.
I've always been fascinated by technology because I think it's the one thing that can make us have the best lives possible, that things could do things for us that we couldn't do for ourselves. I think the handoff to automation will be gradual over the next 50 years. I think we're seeing it happen. We just don't even realize how much it's happening. In the future, artificial intelligence is going to become far closer to human intelligence. And we're going to start modeling emotion. Emotion is foundational to artificial intelligence and rational decision making. It's the foundation of common sense. It's what led us to survive. Now, as intelligence starts becoming more embodied in terms of in robots, in sensors, these things will also have to know how to survive and navigate, and they're going to have their own sort of emotion model. It's actually going to help them learn to interact with us. You give feedback to your new intelligent devices of the future, your intelligent cars, your intelligent personal assistant, your intelligent robots, by reinforcement from what you tell them in a positive or negative tone, just the way that, children learn and dogs learn. So right now, sensors allow us to keep track of things that we normally would not track and make sense of things that we might not otherwise make sense of. What if I had a personal assistant for my life who sort of knew what I needed and could make recommendations and suggestions and follow me around all day? How physiologically stressed I am might be measured by something like heart rate or galvanic skin response. Only sensors could tell these things. It gives an objective measure of my physiological state. And I can sort of benchmark that against, how much time did I spend driving? How much sleep did I get? What did I eat? And can I collectively learn these things not only every day throughout my life, but are there people who are similar enough to me that I could consider them virtual proxies for me, who are also collecting this information and see what are their life choices and then look at the outcomes? What would I need to do to live a healthy, full, happy life? And then make intelligent decisions. So in 2064, I think the world of transportation will be drastically changed, especially for urban environments. Right now, I think safety is one of the most critical problems we're facing. I think that driving is actually an unnatural act. It's not like your skin, it's not like your senses, it's not like your body. I have great control over my body. I don't have that same sense with my car. Unfortunately, driving is very necessary. We're expected to travel distances that are only convenient by car. But now, if those things can be done for you, you can free up your life to do other tasks. And I imagine there's going to be a strong demand for autonomous vehicles such that we can reclaim part of our lives. I think artificial intelligence is going to have a huge impact, across the globe on our lives, especially in cities. One of the major problems of cities is the transportation routing problem. And believe it or not, that gets solved by artificial intelligence. What I imagine what we'll have are these small autonomous vehicles that sort of roam around the city that you can summon. So it'll be like taking a taxi, but it'll be much more efficient because the entire road will be filled with the autonomous cars, so everything will be perfectly scheduled. The cars all talk to each other, and everything can go much faster than a human could drive it because the sensors will allow the safe stopping distance to be much, much smaller. So in a world where all cars were autonomous, this means there's not going to be any cars parked anywhere. For most of a car's life, it is not used. It's just taking up space somewhere, just sitting on the streets or in a parking lot, and you're not using it. If these cars were a shared utility, you could get more utilization per vehicle. Entire streets that could be reclaimed as green space or open space for people. No one would get hit. You could let your children play on the streets of New York, it would be safe. I think we owe it to ourselves to all live the best lives we possibly can. I think it's what we want for our children, it's what we want for ourselves. When we have robot assistants to help us, when we have personal AI, when we have autonomous pod cars to take us wherever we want to go, our lives will be more free to think of the next big thing, to expand the realms of science and technology. These things will unburden us from the tasks we don't want to do and free us up to do the really important creative work that we need to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, imagine having a personal assistant with you at all time who can not only use your own data, but also learn from the information collected from people like you to help make the best decisions possible. And what I find most interesting about what she had to say was not maybe directly finding those companies that are going to create those innovations, but what's going to come along with these is semiconductor chips, cloud computing, or data aggregation, or cybersecurity that's going to be required to protect all of this data. And when we build these portfolios where we're focusing on equities for the long term, we may indirectly play some of those areas without owning that actual technology, more of an intraplay on the growth of that sector of the economy. So some of the tools that help you with how to invest and save during retirement, although you can choose to invest, your money any way you like, among any funds available in your 401k plan or in your retirement account, sometimes the choices can be overwhelming, which is what we're here to help you do. How much to put in each stock. So we have a rule in our focus equity portfolio: no more than 10% of capital is going to be invested in one individual security or stock. That helps single stock risk, reduces that exposure. How much to put in bonds. There's an old adage, you take your age minus 100, that's how much you should have an equity exposure. But I think that that's a little bit antiquated because, even if you have an over amount in bonds, we've seen just like what happened during COVID, bonds went down, not as equally as bad as stocks, but they did go down, specifically in '08. And they're not giving any real rates of return. So we think that the way to drive future growth over an extended retirement, or even as you're younger building a retirement, is to have exposure to good, solid companies, number one. But if you're stuck in a plan, then having good, solid exposure into different indexes. And when within these categories, how much to put in each of those areas, which is what our job is to do. And most experts, recommend that you invest in some diversified mix of either funds or stocks that's appropriate for your time horizon, kind of like what I said a little bit earlier. And some of the plans or in the retirement portfolios will be able to offer guidance in putting together an appropriate mix in several ways, as far as, investment models, target date funds. But we still believe that the best path to prosperity is actually owning entrepreneurs' ideas that are in the shells of companies. And I can go through any of those options in more detail. Just make sure you reach out to us. But an important takeaway is that your unique plan provides you with the tools and the services to help you make those decisions, along with working with us. What I wanted to point out here is, now we focus a lot in large cap growth, right? The biggest companies in the United States, US large cap growth specifically. But what this shows is kind of a balanced diversification approach and how it kind of reduces risk, because you can't pick the best one every single year. And the gray box represents a mix of diversified funds, and you can see how it hovers in the middle of the chart, never at the top, never at the bottom, thereby reducing the risk of investing in just one specific type of fund, which is what we try to, implore to our clients, whether that's diversification across sectors, whether that's diversification across different companies, or whether that's actual programs that are built into the models that we're running that really allow us to control the sector exposure or the single stock exposure inside of the portfolios. So there are tools to help you, and that's what we're here for. And like I said, diversification is a very important strategy for any retirement investor, but it's certainly not the only tool that's available to help make saving and investing simpler and more effective. You have to use our firm as a resource, and we have a tremendous amount of access to information, including whether it's articles about savings or other financial planning topics, calculators to help understand whether you're on track for your retirement goals or not, or additional materials about investing in retirements or specific funds that are available inside of your plans, whether that's fact sheets, plan features, or rules. So throughout your life, you will undoubtedly, face different financial challenges, but your retirement plan and investing are an important piece of not only your financial future, but also your families and next generations. So make sure you get the most out of your investments today by, contributing as well as investing, and by utilizing the resources that we have at our disposal to help you along that journey. And of course, like I've said earlier, I am here to help any way I can with any of those decisions, and can answer any specific questions you might have, after today's webinar. Just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to do so. But remember, it's conversations with tomorrow. And think back to the three visionaries we heard during this presentation. And did you notice how each of them is thinking further to help make our world a better place? And their optimism is essential to their ability to see potential in the future. They don't wait for the future to happen. They are actually making it happen today. And I'm encouraging you to do the same. So don't just let the future happen to you. Take charge of what lies ahead. Lean on us to help make that future a reality. Start having your own conversation with your future self, whether that's you're in retirement, what do you want the next 10 years of your retirement to look like? Or if you're just starting, what do you want the next 20 years of your future self to look like? Think about the life you want for years from now and follow these steps that we kind of outlined today to make that vision a possibility. And just remember, if you want to watch the full video interviews of any of these visionaries, we do have them available to send out, as well as we will be posting this. So this really does, conclude in review what we want to do. We want to make sure that anyone that you know that's starting to save, start early. Save as much as you can. If you're in retirement or you're approaching retirement, make sure to always keep a long-term focus and revisit your vision of the future regularly. If anything changes specifically with us, when we meet with you 3 or 4 times a year, if anything does change, make sure you're proactive in letting us know so that we can make adjustments accordingly. And then always remember, use the available tools that we have to make sure that you're on track to meet any specific goals that you have. I hope everybody enjoyed, today's webinar series for Whalen University. And just remember, when we're building portfolios, we want to think for the future, because great things happen when you think further. So thank you for joining today. Our number's down at the bottom, 866-600-3030. You can send us a general email at info@whalenfinancial.com, or you can reach out to me personally. I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for taking the time. And I look forward, we're going to be sending out information on our Whalen University topics for next month. And feel free to share this when we send them out. Have a great day.